And welcome, Hoosier fans, to this week's edition of Assembly Call Radio, where each week we discuss the most interesting topics in the world of Indiana basketball. This is our 198th edition of Assembly Call Radio and our 659th episode overall of the Assembly Call, recorded on the evening of Thursday, December 17th, 2020. I'm your host, Andy Bottoms. And let's begin this edition of the Assembly Call how we begin every edition of the Assembly Call, and that is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment.
Takes the shot.
The Hoosiers have won the national championship.
Well, since I wasn't able to be on the North Alabama postgame show, I didn't get my chance to sing the praises of Armand Franklin, so I figured this would be as good a place to do it as any, since nothing much has happened in the IU basketball world this week, other than the commitment that we'll talk about here in a minute. But Armand comes out of that North Alabama game, scores 19 points, 5 made threes, which is huge for him and this team. 5 assists, 4 rebounds, and 3 steals. And through 6 games, he is tied for second in the team in scoring, he's third in rebounding, second in assists, and first in steals. He's got at least 8 points in 5 of 6 games and at least 4 rebounds in 5 of 6 games. And some of the comments after the game, one from Armand himself and one from Archie, I thought were telling. From Armand's perspective, he said, "Just want to play both ends of the floor and trying to be a complete two-way player. That's what I strive to be. I'm working to do that every day." And I think we see that in the three-point shooting and the improvement that he showed in that game. And Ryan, you mentioned it after the show that looked like he'd really worked on his shot and things were a bit smoother in that game. And Archie echoed some of that. Archie said he continues to evolve as a player for us, but I was really happy for him to see that ball go through the net. He's really worked hard on it, and I think that's going to be the Armand that we get used to seeing. IU fans certainly hope so. With the way that he's defending for us and the way that he's creating, he's turning into a terrific player early in the year for us. And as we look at what the season might be, a leap like this and sustained some level of this production, not making 5 threes a game by any stretch of the imagination, but this sustained production and this leap from Armand will go a long way toward doing that. I think Al will. I think the ankle injury has probably bothered him a bit in these last couple games as he recovers from that, and I think you know what you're going to get from him overall. You've got Rob, who has been steady, and I think everybody's hoping to see a little bit more of. And Armand does some of the things from a defensive standpoint that you see from Rob, and plays a bit more downhill. And so I think just having another threat on the perimeter, another guy who really attacked the basket, and another guy who's a really strong defender will go a long way toward figuring out where this team finishes overall in the Big Ten. And I think among a number of bright spots for IU through these first 6 games, Armand, to me, has certainly been one of those, and just wanted to circle back and talk about him given the way he played against North Alabama. So with that, let me introduce my esteemed co-host for this week's show. To my left,
he remembers the days when a movie cost $1. Heaven help you if you ever decide to pop your collar. Play hard, but remember, fake hustle is a crime. He's the coach and it's Tonsoni time.
Coach, it's Tonsoni time. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, a couple things. One, just really glad that Indiana's been able to get their games in this crazy time, and also that Indiana's defense is being talked about in Ken Palm rankings, on podcasts about how the Hoosiers are defensive-minded first and how it's keeping them in ball games. That's just a return to the Indiana basketball that I really came to know and love from the Coach Knight days, and I think that's winning basketball. If you can guard people, you're going to be in games even on nights when your offense leaves you for the most part. And in this tough schedule looking ahead, I think that bodes well for a very competitive Indiana Hoosiers. The second thing is the value of Coach Hunter, real good hire by Archie Miller, and we'll talk Parker Stewart here. But the bottom line is that the young man who just recently committed and transferred came because of the relationship with Coach Hunter, and I just get the feeling that he's one of those dudes that really can relate to the players, hold them accountable, yes, coach them hard, but that the players really like. And it means a lot, given Parker Stewart's situation with the loss of his dad, that he wants to come to a place that has a family atmosphere and really has some tradition, and that's Indiana basketball. And so those are a couple things that I'm thinking about this week as we get prepared to watch Saturday's ball game.
And to my right.
Analyzing players, finding every wrinkle. He hasn't ever hosted, never lifted a finger. He's got all the
Well, let me quickly add just one thing about this.
Dude just interrupted his own jingle.
Ryan, what's your rant this week on Indiana basketball? Though Jared did open it up in the run sheet that if you wanted to take some shots at the college football playoff, this would be potentially the place to do it. Maybe we don't have enough time for that. It's tough to say.
Probably not. That's an entire show to itself. The rankings are an absolute joke. I wrote about it at the Big Lead this week if you guys want to go look that up. I want to talk about Parker Stewart. I know we're going to in this segment, but I wanted to start off saying I think it's a big addition for Indiana. Not only getting a guy who has starting experience in a major conference. I think a lot of people are losing their, talking about, Tennessee Martin and his work there, which was great. He averaged 19 points, 4.5 rebounds, 3.8 assists, and hit a lot of 3-pointers for them, and was a second team all conference in the Ohio Valley Conference. That's great. But he also, as a freshman, started games at Pitt in the ACC and acquitted himself well. He broke their, record for 3-point shots hit as a freshman. And you know whose record he broke? And I texted this to you guys earlier. It was Sean Miller. And so, there are connections there. And the fact that this is a guy who can stand out on the perimeter and shoot the ball. His percentage dropped a little at UT Martin, but his coach will tell you when guys shoot a higher volume and are forced to be the lead guard and also scorer, their 3-point percentage typically drops. He will not be relied on to be the only guy scoring on this team on a high level. And therefore, that will give him a chance to more zero in on just being a good shooter on the perimeter. And you look at his form, it works. His shot is the same every time, something you can't say about a lot of the guys on this Indiana team. Will he shoot 40%? I don't know, but it's a consistent, reliable 3-point shooter and a guy who can score the basket and do, different things on offense as well. And, he's a coach's son, so he's going to be committed to the principles of defense and all of that. So he fits in really well with what Indiana needs. And it's a guy who, if he doesn't play till next season, we know there's questions about whether he'll play later in this season. But if he doesn't play till next season, it's a really good replacement for Al Durham. Essentially, you're swapping them one for one. And you've got a guy with a lot of experience who can knock down shots. And something that Indiana desperately has needed finally gets and improves an aspect that needed to be filled. Now they need to go get potentially find a post player somewhere, or a bigger wing that can sort of slide between the post and the perimeter somewhere. I think the transfer market's going to be the place they find him.
All right. Well, here's what we're going to talk about on this week's edition of the Assembly Call. First, big news that we got a shooter, as I think we've all touched on so far with the Parker Stewart commitment. So we'll talk a bit about that. Some of the questions that Ryan mentioned there. We'll look at some early season. We'll do some buy-sell and a few trends that we've seen so far this season through the first 6 games, and then we'll answer your questions as we always do. All of that coming your way on this edition of the Assembly Call. But before we get to all that, let's talk about our new sponsor this season, Superior Insulation, aka Superior Insulators. The first thing you need to know about them, as with almost all of our sponsors, is that they're diehard Hoosiers. Brad, the owner of Superior Insulation, is an IU fan and longtime Assembly Call listener. The second thing you need to know about Superior Insulation is that they will literally make your life more comfortable by helping you fix drafty rooms, cold floors, and even excess noise. Plus, their systems help you save money through lower utility bills. More comfort and cost savings? It's not quite the double-double that Trace Jackson-Davis delivered against Florida State, but it's close. And with winter here and colder temperatures still to come, now is the perfect time to invite Brad and his team out to your home or business so that they can do for you what they did for IU. Yes, the Superior Insulators did all the air barrier systems and spray foam for the new IU Excellence Academy. Brad and his team also worked on the new football locker room, Marching 100 Hall, and many other buildings throughout campus. Like I said, they're Hoosiers through and through, and damn good at what they do. Another longtime listener, Rick, reached out last week and told me he booked a consultation with Superior Insulation, and you should too, because check this out. They have a special offer for Assembly Call listeners. You will get a $50 home field apparel gift card when you call and schedule an appointment in a qualifying area. And the Superior Insulators have 4 locations covering roughly the southern 2/3 of Indiana plus the northern part of Kentucky. Just tell them the Assembly Call sent you to get your gift card. So visit insulators.com or just Google Superior Insulation to learn more and schedule your appointment. Then Brad and his team can help you create a healthier, quieter, and more energy-efficient home. That's insulators.com, INSEALATORS.com to learn more. And tell me Assembly Call sent you to get your $50 home field apparel gift card. All right, guys. So the big news this week, with no games since Sunday, was Parker Stewart committing to Indiana, and like I said, we've all talked through that. Just to give a little background for people, started his career at Pitt, did play a lot as a freshman. Ryan, as you mentioned, shot 38.6% from three there, and was really, as Alex Bozich posted today at Inside the Hall, he did a really good write-up of kind of how his role changed from where he was really used largely as a spot-up shooter at Pitt, and then what his role became last season at UT Martin, where he transferred to play for his father, the late Anthony Stewart. And so obviously a lot of things changed, used more possessions, but I think it's good to already have the baseline of knowing he can play against high major competition. Although I will say Alex had embedded a video of some of his highlights from his freshman year, and there were a couple times where the score would be at the bottom where he would hit a shot and they were just getting obliterated against multiple teams. But I do think he's got a proven track record as a shooter, which is the thing that IU fans will really like. And again, at UT Martin, got a chance to do some different things there, had the ball in his hands more, was used a lot more in pick and roll situations.
Played 36 minutes a game. I mean,
yeah. So yeah, got a ton of playing time, earned it, and played really well. So, Ryan, we talked about doing a more in-depth scouting report later, and maybe once we get a better idea what he's going to do. What are just your initial impressions of what you've seen from him? I know you mentioned a little bit earlier about the shot, but any other scouting report type things that you'd throw out here, at least at the surface?
He's got a scorer's mentality. You can tell he's constantly looking to attack, but he's not a ball. I mean, he averaged 3.8 assists as playing off the ball, so he's willing to set other guys up. But he's got that scorer's mentality. And the other thing that I liked about his shot is it has a really quick release, quick trigger. And it, as I mentioned in the opening, it looks the same every time. He's not, his feet are set. The release is where it is every single time. He gets rotation on the shot. He's not a guy who you're going to have to tinker with a whole lot. And again, he grew up the son of a coach, so that was probably drilled into him really young. I just think that there's also a confidence about him offensively that I think that Indiana badly needs. And just a guy who is sure of himself and knows what he's going to do when he gets the ball. And he's a little bigger too. He's about 6'5", 210, whereas Indiana's got some smaller guards. They've got some slight guards. He's well built and can sort of play that wing spot, switch between a 2 and a 3, which I don't really think there is much of a difference in Indiana's system, but it's the ability to play small forward because of his size. And yeah, I just think, he's an all-around player. I don't know about him defensively. We haven't, there's not a whole lot of film on him defensively, but offensively, he just looks like a confident, self-assured guy who's going to knock down shots. And then, if teams overplay, he's willing to mix it up and drive in. And he clearly is fine with setting other guys up, given his numbers on assists. And so he could step in and be the main guy handling the ball because he did it last year. Now it's a different level of competition, but I think that's important as well. Somebody gets into foul trouble. All right, who do we go offensively? He can step in and do that.
So, Coach, I think the obvious, I don't know that there's an obvious comparison where people have gone is thoughts about how does this compare to the Evan Fitzner transfer. I think the comparison is that they're both guys brought in and the belief was they're here to shoot the ball. I tend to feel the comparisons really stop at that point, but I guess how do you respond, Coach, to the questions about, is this the Fitzner ended up being disappointing? How do we maybe talk people out of the fact that the same could happen here?
Well, you use common sense. I mean, simply if transfers were not always going to work out, then no one would bring transfers in. So there are examples around the country of transfers who come in and can play a pretty good role for the team. We're not saying this guy is going to lead us to the NCAA championship or Final Four. He's going to help this team be better because he can shoot the ball and he can go a little bit downhill. And here's the thing where he was at an ACC school, and I saw the same scores that you did. But he still was not afraid to shoot the basketball as a freshman. He was recruited at that level. And then he went to play for his dad and then became that ball handler, have to come off ball screens. So he added to his skill set by going and playing at UT Martin. It's not – I've heard that the talk too. Well, if he was any good, why was he playing at UT Martin? He's playing for his dad. And that's a thing a lot of dads and kids want to do. And when the dad got the head coaching job, I don't know that for certain that it was at that timing, but he wanted to come play for his dad, and he wanted that situation. So I think there's you can't compare to the last transfer coming in. I always think you have to really be careful about transfers fitting into the program, and that would be a question about whether he plays this year or not. Seems like a top-notch kid. In order to get 2 degrees in less than 4 years, the kid's got to have a head on his shoulders. And so I think we're getting someone that's going to fit into the buy-in that we have, and not I'm just pleased that Archie is still, he's trying, and everyone gets, a little worried when this guard goes somewhere or this big goes somewhere, who's going to come in the recruiting. And that's where I sit is I'll talk about them when they commit. And then, over the long run, you do have to evaluate a coach's recruiting. But I think this is a really, really good get for Indiana.
Yeah. And just on the Fitzner thing, because somebody went after me on Twitter, and I shouldn't have even answered, but it is saying, well, how is this any different than Fitzner? It's, and Joel had mentioned that, and I think he was just kind of being contrarian, and we had a fun back and forth, but somebody else jumped in and said, oh, it's exactly like Fitzner. It's a guy you thought would come in and shoot. And it's like, no. Fitzner was a reserve at St. Mary's. We all expected him to come in off the bench and make some shots, not come in and definitively impact the team. And we didn't expect much else from Fitzner other than being a tall guy who could occasionally come in and hit some shots. He played 15 minutes a game at St. Mary's and was going to IU. Now, he did hit 40% of his three-pointers the year before he showed up at IU, and then dropped to 30% at IU. I mean, it collapsed. And whether that's on the coaching staff or him or facing different competition, we don't know. But he's a guy who, yes, he was supposed to come in and shoot, but he also dropped, he went from being an 86% free throw shooter to a 66% free throw shooter, not in a lot of attempts. So, I mean, he's a guy who came in and just didn't handle that situation very well. This is a different story with a guy who has come from the ACC and starting in the ACC as a freshman, then going and being the guy at a school in the Ohio Valley Conference, where Fitzner was a reserve on about the same level in the West Coast Conference. So, I mean, the comparisons don't match up. Now, I get it. The baseline is that they were both coming in to be shooters, but Stewart is a far more accomplished player, a far more confident player, and a guy who has the pedigree of somebody who can step in and play right away and not need a huge adjustment period. So I just think that I get it. It's the last transfer who was supposed to shoot that came in. And now, honestly, I think that a better comparison for Parker Stewart would be, and I would say that Parker Stewart is far more accomplished than this guy, but it would be Nick Zeisloft is more of a comparison of a guy who can come in and, fit into the team a little bit different and do some different things along with shooting. Now, Zeisloft was not as athletic. He was not as good a scorer as Stewart is, and he hadn't played at as high a level as Stewart has. And he'd never been the lead guard anywhere. But that's a much more equitable comparison than to Evan Fitzner, who we didn't really know much of. We just looked at the numbers and said, well, he can hit shots. And so that's the difference, I think. And we were all at the time with Fitzner came in so desperate for any shooter that you see a guy who knocked down 40% of his threes at 6'10", and you're thinking, we got a shooter, and this is a little bit different. I really do think this is a completely different situation. And it's a guy who can really play.
And Bielfeldt was a good transfer.
I think
right? And Keith Smart was a pretty good transfer. Dean Garrett was a pretty good transfer that came in. You remember that there are some that work out and there are some that don't work out. And to compare just at the commitment time, I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is the fact that he played at Pitt and was able to succeed at a high level. That gives him a floor that you didn't have with Fitzner, where you kind of know at least there's a baseline of what you're going to get. And to your point, he expanded on some other skills, albeit at a lower level, and then you kind of see what happens. But,
obviously, if you expect Stewart to come in and score 20 points a game, you're going to be disappointed. That's not going to happen. He was the lead guy getting the ball, being like, hey, go score. He's going to have to fit into an orchestra at Indiana. It's going to be different, but for a fact he can shoot and score the basketball when he needs to.
So we don't have a ton of time left in this segment, so we'll take this quick because I don't think any of us really know. You know, the $1 million question here is whether he'll play this year. There's really no penalty for him not to in terms of the way the eligibility rules are and things like that. What you do have to be cognizant of is the chemistry, how fast does he pick up the system, and the fact that he's gone through a tragic event in his life with the loss of his dad. So what he wants to do really needs to, be the driving force behind that. Even though there's no downside from either his eligibility from IU standpoint for getting him in a few minutes here and there, it really is going to be dependent upon how quickly that comes around. And I don't, we're not going to know that. We're not going to know that now. We're not going to know that a week from now. Doesn't really matter. If you guys had to guess, we'll just keep this brief and not pretend we know things that we don't. Coach, I'll throw it to you first. If you had to guess, do we see him play at all over the latter part of this season?
And who knows? I think he's going to be hungry to play once he gets back in things. I think with the tragedy has happened, it sounds like he hasn't been in the gym, and one of his concerns was getting back in shape, getting back to be a basketball player. And only he and the trainers and they'll know exactly when that'll be physically and mentally. And getting used to the new surroundings, getting to your classes and all that kind of stuff. He may want to just take that time off. But there's something about a competitor and a coach's kid especially that when you start getting in the gym, you start getting your legs. I think he might say, Coach, in an injury situation, a foul situation, or if I've earned my way in there and I can work, I wouldn't be surprised if everything goes perfectly in his mind that he might see some time towards the back end of the season, especially when it doesn't hurt because of the COVID situation, his eligibility for a couple more years. I'm leaning towards no. Just because I think there's a lot to overcome. I lost my dad at 38, and it took me years to really overcome it if I've ever have, and then go into a new situation. So I'm leaning that he won't play. But I think there'll be a hunger for him once he gets his win back to maybe at least be available in case he's needed.
Yeah, and what I would say is he's not even going to be on campus until after Christmas. So it's not like this is something where he's coming in, he's going to play in January. He's going to come in, and I bet he'll practice with the team, get a feel of the offense, get a feel of the defense, be a practice player, maybe emulate some lead guards for other teams in practice as sort of a scout player. And then as the season wears on, if he's in shape, he's looking good, and he feels like he's part of the team, part of the offense, part of everything, it's, so I think they're going to treat it as if he's a normal transfer that's sitting out the year. But if he gets in the flow of things, and maybe it's late February and IU's looking good and they want to add another guy who can shoot, to give us 10, 15 bench minutes, or there's an injury or something and they need an extra guard, I think you might see a change. I would say right now, from this perspective, I would say it's a no. And I would say that because his attitude seems to be, I'm sitting this year out. I sat the first semester out. I am, and I'm not even going to be on campus. If he was desperate to play right now, he'd be on campus. You know what I mean? But he's taking his time. He's spending time with his family as he should, and all of those things. And I think that I think it's probably a no right now. But who knows once he gets in the gym and starts practicing and feels like, part of the family and part of the team.
All right. Well, coming up, we're 6 games into the season now for IU, and so we've started to see some early season trends that are emerging. We'll pick out a few of the most notable ones and tell you whether we're buying them or selling them. Stick with us. All right. Welcome, everybody. Good 24-minute opening segment there, but I think that's fine.
The thing for everyone, for me, is his mentality that Ryan brought up.
Guys.
The dude likes to score. I mean, you see a lot of freshmen who are good shooters come in and they might pass up shots, take up shots. We're dealing with that with Leo right now, that I think he's passed up some open shots. Well, when Stewart got in at Pitt, he didn't pass many up, whether his time came when they were down 20 or whatever. But there were some games on the road in tough venues where the game was 5, 6, 7 points. So he was in crunch time and he was looking to score. And again, does that play in the Big Ten, which is a lot more physical, and then the crowds are back by the time next year and everything? Does that transfer to the Big Ten? We'll see. But you can't recruit experience. You can recruit potential at the freshman level, at the high school level. Getting someone who's played some college basketball and been successful with his shot and scoring average at UT Martin, you can bank on that to do some things that you can't do sometimes with freshmen.
Yeah, I think it's also worth noting he seems like a very mature kid, and mature kids handle new situations better than freshmen do, or immature kids. And I think that's a huge part of this. You just listen to him talk, and he just seems like he's got such a balanced view of things, and he's a, everyone raves about what a good kid he is and all that stuff, and that's important. And also, again, he's played a couple years of college basketball. He's been in college basketball for 3 years, I believe, right? Because he played as a true freshman.
Yeah, he had to
he sat out
a
a year. So this is his fourth. This would be his fourth year of college basketball. He's mature. He's a guy who's going to handle, crowds, and he's going to handle opponents, and he's going to handle those things really well, and handle, maybe frustration with not getting the offense right away. He's not going to throw up his hands and run out of the gym. He's going to keep working at it. He knows. And again, being the son of a coach, that mentality. You just got to keep working on it. Just keep working on it.
And the Fitzner comparison too, that was more of a reach of trying to roll the dice and have something work at that point of when Archie brought him in. Where now Archie knows kind of what he wants.
I blame those videos on Twitter of Fitzner just raining jumpers in for everybody's expectations getting out of whack there. That's what really soured Coach on those videos. Yeah. That's what really soured Coach on those videos.
But I bet you love. I bet you
never forgotten it.
Bet you love the Tom Allen postgame videos, don't you, Coach?
Don't get me started. I'm a happy Tom Allen fan. But
you don't like him. You don't like him talking to the team after the game.
Yeah. Those are good. Those are good.
Social media department. It's doing work. Yeah, it's doing work.
I was slow to the LEO stuff, but it's working, and I'm proud of him. And so,
but I will say, Coach, and I'll say this to everybody: if you don't like all the social media videos and all that stuff, that's fine, because we are not the target. The target is those kids in high school who are seeing that like, right. Oh, if I go there, they're going to hype me up. I'm going to be on Twitter. I'm going to,
flex my bare chest to social media world.
Yep. Did that. And I'll tell you what, more than even 5 years ago, that matters. Everybody is bulking that stuff up. It matters.
Yep.
All right. You guys ready for the
what do we got next?
Next segment here, we got bye. So I didn't have the chance to look or add any that he had. So I think.
Oh, we can mention. We didn't really get to any other Hoosier headlines. We can mention Tom Allen, Coach of the Year. I think that's good.
I mean, I don't know. There's too much to talk about. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
I mean, it is to him, but
for the purposes of the Indiana Athletic Department, a pretty penny.
It will for sure.
Yeah, and it's
$100,000. Just for winning
it's so 2020 when Indiana has a really solid football program and they only get to play 7 times.
I know.
8 at the bowl game.
Getting a couple guys drafted too, and
let's just hope it continues. And
they got a pretty good squad. They got a
lot coming back.
Yeah,
a lot coming back.
If Penix can stay healthy, but hey, Tuttle looked good, so you've got that at least. But Penix has got to get healthy. Because he adds definitely about 20 feet to their ceiling.
All right. We will get rolling on here.
What's going on? It's Christian Wofford. What's the only thing better than an epic buzzer beater? Celebrating it with friends afterwards. Join my guys Jared, Andy, Ryan, and Coach on the assembly call after every IU game. Go Hoosiers.
And welcome back to the Assembly Call. You can find all of our content at our website, assemblycall.com. And if you ever want to join the chat mob during our unedited live broadcast or watch those replays and see all the between segment banter, then check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. I'm Andy Bottoms here with Coach Brian Tonsoni and Ryan Phillips. And tonight wanted to take a step back, look at a few early season trends through 6 games for IU. heading into the Crossroads over the weekend against Butler. So the first one I use currently, and this was really heading into today, so if things happen this evening that change this, I don't know. I use currently number 10 in adjusted defensive efficiency at KenPom and number 6 according to Bart Torvik. Are you buying or selling Indiana as a top 15 defense this season? Jared did give his thoughts on this, so I'll let you guys think about it for a minute while I talk through that. So he says selling but slightly, so hedging a bit, but he said top 20-ish. I think front court depth is going to hurt us in Big Ten play. And there are some really high-powered offenses in the Big Ten, although I recognize it's adjusted efficiency, but will still be challenges week after week with little to no margin for error in terms of foul trouble or injury for Trace and Race. So, Coach, I'll throw this one to you first since you brought up the defense early on. You buying or selling IU as a top 15 defense?
You know, I think I'm going to go with Jared with the slight sell if you can – temper your buy sell. Being in top 15 in the Big Ten is going to really take a lot of effort, and the talent gets tougher. You might see those numbers slip a little bit. That doesn't mean Indiana's defense will not be good, and that doesn't mean that it won't be a reason why they win enough games to get into the tournament and maybe make a second weekend in a tournament. I think their defense is the best it's been under Archie Miller. It is something I'm enjoying watching, but there's a lot of variables to stay in that top 15 compared to other great defensive teams as well. You could 17, 18 drop from 10th to there just by playing tough opponents while you're winning games. So just because the bar was set at 15, I would definitely buy it in the top 20 if the metric was set or the bar was set there.
Ryan, what about you?
Okay, I'm going to put a caveat out there. If they stay healthy, if all the main guys stay healthy, I think it's a top 15 defense, and I'll tell you why. The way they play together with the switching and the timing and knowing where each other are going to be and knowing when to rotate down. I mean, they are a machine right now. They really are. Even the guys we look at as bad defenders are playing well. I mean, Al Durham is not a great on-ball defender, but because he's getting help from everybody else exactly where he's supposed to, he's looked much better this year. Jerome Hunter, a guy we expected to maybe be an average defender this year, has looked much better this year. The only guys who have looked outmatched at any point, consistently outmatched. I mean, you get beat on a drive, you get beat on a drive. The only people that have looked consistently outmatched are the freshmen, which is what you would expect. Most of them are playing in a pack line for the first time, and they're getting used to the speed, size, and all, experience of the guys they're playing against. This looks like a group that just works well together. My concerns are not on the defensive, the actual defensive ability of these guys. My only worry is one, health, and two, allowing offensive rebounds to opponents. Those are the only two issues I have with this team where I'm thinking maybe there's a problem. I do think they've started to rebound better, and I do think the guards are getting more involved in the rebounding. So I think both of those things are positives. But honestly, if they all stay healthy and they all play like they have with the aggressiveness they have, and I realize that can wane over a season as guys get tired, but if they play with that aggressiveness, I think it's top 15 defense. And
where you're right on that, Ryan, is that Indiana's played 4 good basketball clubs. And they've gotten there, and some of that is still KenPom's based on projection still and some of the stuff from last year. So it's not till late January to where it's a true reflection of this year only. So that's another reason why the numbers can be skewed a little bit. But where you're right is the fact that, Indiana, even in the Texas game, was playing great defense.
Good. Yeah.
That was a game that if they played average offense would have been right in that ball game.
Yeah. There were a couple stretches at the very end that looked bad, but that was, you were mixing in new guys. I agree, Coach. I just think that and one of the great changes has been the switching on the perimeter because all those guys can guard everybody and it doesn't leave you. And the other thing is that on those switches, they're getting back, even when guys hedge screens, they're getting back and covering it. And then you've got Trace Jackson-Davis inside and Race Thompson inside covering for you. They've just worked it very well. I think the switches, the fact that a lot of different guys can switch. I mean, Race Thompson switching on to guards and guarding them well and forcing them out on the perimeter and not getting driven by because he's athletic enough to defend. You don't want to have him there forever, and you'll see when the ball moves, he'll switch with somebody. But he is going out and switching sometimes. And it's just last year we saw all the problems they had was with that high hedge and with not recovering. That has not been a problem this year because these guys are hustling to get in position. Sometimes they're fighting through the screens and don't need it. And in a lot of cases, they're switching the screens, which negates the need for that high hedge. I just think it's been a great adjustment, and it's really shown that these guys all know each other well, know the system well, and are just locked in playing together and communicating. That's the other thing, is they have to be communicating for that to work, and they clearly are.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy it because why not be optimistic? I do think some of the potential pitfalls that you guys talked about are there. The only thing I would add is I listened to the latest podcast on the Brink today, and Alex had Brian Butch on, and who had done the game against North Alabama. And say what you want about Wisconsin guys, but they know what good defense looks like, and he had a lot of good things to say about what he'd seen from IU's defense. And even in the games that they lost, it was not a function of really collapsing on the defensive end. So I think, again, some of the Big Ten teams that they'll play will present different challenges than teams like Florida State and Texas, but I do think they acquitted themselves well enough in those games to one, have won the games had you seen better offensive performances, or one play here there goes their way against Florida State. So I'm gonna buy it, even though and boy, if you are there at the end of the season and the way the Big Ten is shaping up, you will certainly have earned it. All right, so the next one. Trace Jackson-Davis currently number 2 on the KenPom Player of the Year rater, in large part due to his massive usage rate and production. Are you buying or selling Trace as a first or second team All-American this season? Ryan, I'll throw this one to you first.
If he keeps playing, if he keeps coming out aggressive, yeah. I mean, this is what an All-American looks like the last couple of weeks. I mean, we've seen him, and it was the last game in Maui, and since then he's looked fantastic. And he's been a guy that they can just attack with. And when he is ready to go from the beginning, he's going to live at the free throw line. And especially in the Big Ten, I think he's going to live at the free throw line. But if he has that attitude of that he can attack anyone and beat anyone, which is correct and the right attitude to have, because he's better than everyone, pretty much everybody he's going to face. He's going to be better than. If he does that, then yes, he's a second team. He's a first or second team All-American, unquestioned. He's in the race for Big Ten Player of the Year.
Yeah, I'm buying it as well. He just came out after that Texas performance and has really changed. And a couple things that, he has great statsing. It has been a lot better. He's finding open man out of double teams and even inside the zone. Post-to-post passing. He's also hit some 15-foot jumpers coming off the short roll in the pick and roll, and he adds that to his repertoire. And man, he's just a rebounding machine and a pogo stick, and he's getting some blocks. I think his all-around game has gotten so much better, and if he just brings that energy, and who's to doubt it, because he's the leader on the team as well. He's your hardest worker. He's winning the yellow jerseys all the time, and that's going to translate to good performances inside the Big Ten. I think that's going to be recognized, across the country, and I'm buying that.
Yeah, I think first team is probably a bridge too far, but second team to me is certainly within the realm of possibility based on how he's played, what he means to this team. If IU performs well as they get into Big Ten play, you're going to have a lot of marquee games based on how the Big Ten is, and you're going to have a lot of opportunities for him to go against quality opponents. And if he shows himself well, you build momentum in that way. His efficiency numbers look solid, and so I'll buy that one too. All right, number 3. Through 6 games, Armand Franklin has the second highest usage rate among all IU regulars. So that takes Lander out of the picture, and TJD is obviously number 1 in that. So Race, Rob, Al, and Jerome are all right behind him. Are you buying Armand as Indiana's second most important offensive player? Coach, I'll throw this one to you first.
I'm selling that, and it has nothing to do with anything negative about Armand. He has been a very big surprise in the leap that he's taken. He is a very important player for these Indiana Hoosiers. Predominantly, he's another defensive guy that can stop penetration. Archie's talked about that on his show. Second of all, he can score and slash, so he is important. But there's 2 places I'm going to go. Well, one position, 2 players that I think ultimately will help Indiana get to their ceiling, and that is a point guard. And it's pace, and it's distribution of the basketball, and it's hitting open threes, and that's Rob and Christian, I think, have to be combined. That position is going to be the difference between a really solid Indiana year and a good Indiana year. And that doesn't take anything away from Al. That doesn't take anything away from the other guys because you're going to need points. But we can't turn the ball over. We got to get it to the right people, and we got to knock down shots, and that's the role of a point guard. So I believe the second best player is going to be Rob Finney / Christian Lander, if I can combine those two.
Yeah.
And that's taken nothing away from the young man who's just been one of my favorites to watch this year because of his all-around play.
Yeah, I think our second most important offensive player is going to be the guy who we talked about at the beginning of the season as putting a lot of it. Unless Armand Franklin's going to shoot threes the way he did in the last game, which
right.
I don't expect that.
5 per half will take it.
Yeah, I expect him to make some shots, and his shot looks like he's working on it and has improved, but I don't expect him to explode like that. The guy who needs to shoot for Indiana to be successful, there are two of them, but I'm going to stick with one, is Al Durham. And his ability to shoot the ball is going to make a big difference for this team if he can consistently knock it down. Now, he hasn't done it this year, and he hasn't shown up in every game as a senior and attacked the way he should. But I think that he is important because when he does that, it helps out the rest of the team. It evens things out on the perimeter, balances perimeter and post. Armand's best offensive attribute is his ability to slash. Well, we need somebody out on the perimeter to be able to make shots. And I think Al and maybe even Jerome Hunter are the two guys that need to make shots. And that is what makes them so important. You need to have an inside guy. You need to have an outside guy. And so I would say that obviously Trace Jackson Davis is the most important, but Al or Jerome Hunter or whoever steps up and makes shots, and it's those two we're looking at mostly, need to be the second most important.
Yeah, I think there's a line to be drawn between, the way the question at least was phrased was around, is he the second most important offensive player versus is he going to continue to have the second highest usage rate on the team? Because I think the latter of those things is possible. Potentially a bit unlikely, but he's done a good job distributing the ball. He plays downhill where he's trying to attract the defense, and if he's able to, dish off to guys, he gets fouled. He's been getting fouled a decent amount. So I think his usage rate could stay in the neighborhood of where it is, and with a bunch of guys bunched up, like maybe he's second, but I don't think that necessarily means he's the second most important offensive player. And I think the guys that you mentioned probably fit that bill a bit better than he does. And again, I used the opening part of the show to talk about how impressed I've been with him, so it isn't really a slight to him in that regard. But I would tend to sell that, but I think he is going to be a guy who is going to be relied upon, and certainly if he can step up and shoot close to what he did against North Alabama against better competition, that really adds a different dimension to what IU can do. It gives him another guy who can space the floor. Because I think what you like that you've seen from Armand, even when the shots weren't falling, he wasn't afraid to shoot them. And I think that's there's a line to be crossed at some point there, but he to me wasn't close to the line of
he's not short on confidence.
You need to just stop because so he certainly wasn't at that point. So I tend to sell the question the way that it was asked though.
Yeah, and Andy,
the second best versus important. Kathy says this in the chat mob: best versus important. He could be our second best player, offensive player, but there are some. How are you going to define important? That's why I went to the point guard. That's why you went with L, and I think both could be argued that way.
The importance of shooting, the importance of distributing the ball. Yeah, all of those. It's kind of hard to today. What I will say is if you take the offensive out of there, I think he's certainly our second most important player right now because of his defense. I mean, he's shutting really good players down just completely. So if you take the offensive qualifier out of there, yeah, I'd say he's definitely the second most important. And he's been handling the ball a lot more this year, bringing it up. I mean, he's been doing good things on both ends of the floor. It's just the importance of shooting to this team is such that from an offensive perspective, I think it needs to be a shooter. I think somebody has to step up and consistently make shots. Now, in 2 weeks,
could be him.
If he's still shooting, then my answer on this will change.
Yep. All right, last one. So Ken Pom, fifth. Now, I will clarify this is fifth in terms of overall adjusted efficiency in the league, not by projected record, because he has them projected more in the middle of the pack based on what the schedule is. So, but fifth highest rated, we'll say, and Torvik also has them third highest rated, have Indiana clearly among the top 5 teams in the conference early in the season. Are you buying Indiana as a top 5 team in the league? Coach, I think it's your turn to go first. So you buy IU as top 5 team in the Big Ten based on what you've seen so far?
I'm going to give an answer. I'm going to sell that. I'm going to sell it, but these are right on the borderline too. I think if you're in the top half of the Big Ten this year, you're a solid basketball club because you're dealing with the top 4 teams that are really, really outstanding right now, and you can't deny that. And then you got Rutgers, Indiana, and Michigan. So that means those 7 teams I think, are outstanding teams. So to say that guarantee by buying that Indiana's going to be that 5th one ahead of Michigan and Rutgers, I just can't do that yet until we've seen more consistent play and some of the issues that, the rebounding and the turnovers and the consistent shooting to say, yeah, they're going to go up and then start advancing to that top 4. So that's why I'm selling that. Do I think they're a top half team and a 5, 6, 7 seed by the end of the year? Yeah, probably, but I think you're going to see a lot of Big Ten teams in there that even the 8th and 9th and 10th teams from the Big Ten teams are going to get bids likely with as good as the conference is. So I'm selling it just because the conference is so good and the top is so heavy right now on the top. That's the reason I'm selling it. But I do think Indiana can be up there, and I wouldn't be surprised if they are at the end of the year.
Today, I'm selling this. And the reason why is Indiana has played 2 top 14 teams in KenPom. Texas is 7th, Florida State is 14th, and they lost them both. They have to prove they can win those games before I feel like they're definitely a top 5, top 4 Big Ten team. They have to prove they can win those games. Florida State, they had chances, didn't get it done. And some of that was on the coaching. And we talked about that in the postgame. If you're really interested in that, go back and watch the Florida State postgame. There were some things that could have been done to win that game. They played even with them, and they showed that they're on that level, but they didn't win the game. And playing up to the level of an Illinois or a Michigan State or an Iowa or Wisconsin, whatever, that's all well and good, but you got to prove you can beat them. I mean, if you just play with them, that doesn't really give you anything. And so until they prove they can win those games, I'm selling this. And I would say I agree with Coach. I think they're in the top 7 for sure, but top 5 is a different animal. And it's to be the best of that next level or even edging up to that top tier is something this team has to prove to me. And it hasn't proven yet. I think they played very well, but this team needs to prove that it can get over the hump in those games and prove that it can take those games and take down more than not. Win them more often than not. I mean, really, you're not going to win every game you go against a top 15 team that goes down to the wire. You're just not going to win every single one of them, but can they win more than they lose of those? That's what they have to prove to me.
Yeah, I think I fall on the sell side of this as well. I think if you said top 6, I probably would buy it just because I'll take their chances to beat out one of the other 2 that you mentioned, Coach. For me, you looked at it coming into the season, and you had a fairly clear top 4 of Illinois, Wisconsin, Iowa, and Michigan State in some order. And I don't know that any of them have really done a whole lot to talk me out of that. Yeah, Illinois losing at Missouri by 3 is not great. Michigan State, they won at an empty Cameron. I don't know that anybody knows how good Duke is, but they've largely acquitted themselves well. Struggled a bit with Detroit, I believe, was one of their other games. Iowa played really well against North Carolina. Otherwise, haven't played anybody. We'll find out a lot about them against Gonzaga on Saturday. And Wisconsin is 5-1, lost on a tip-in at the end to Marquette, but has a couple other decent wins as well. They play Louisville on Saturday, so again, maybe another chance to find out more about them. So I don't know that any of them has faltered enough to make me think that IU is going to leapfrog one of those teams. I think, Ryan, the point you made was good as well, just in terms of the teams that IU struggled with are ranked in and around where a lot of these other teams are, and Michigan and Rutgers are up there too. So I tend to sell it. I think it's a bit more of a commentary on the league than it is IU. I know that sounds like sugarcoating it and probably not what people want to hear, but when you look around the league, I think it's quite clearly the best. The Big 12 maybe is more top heavy and has more top end teams, but I think top to bottom, it's really strong. So
yeah, the ECC seems down this year.
It was last year too, I think.
Yeah, it's true.
Right. So
yeah, North Carolina was awful last year, and that's a team you can usually rely upon to be pretty darn good.
Yeah, so we'll see. Time will tell on that, but all right. Well, hopefully on that one at least we'll be proven wrong. We'll see about the others, but all right. So that'll do it for that segment. Coming up next, we'll answer your questions, including one about what IU needs to do in their next 7 games, and another about how the extra year of eligibility might play into things for next season. Stick with us. Alrighty. Do some math here. I do not think we have a lot of time left for the last segment, based on quick math at least.
St. Louis is good this year.
Well, you know what's funny? I noticed that Michigan State is undefeated and below us in Ken Palm because they just haven't played anyone, I guess, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they haven't been super. There was the Detroit game, I think. I feel like
it was Detroit Mercy, and
they struggled a little bit with somebody else, and
I'll tell you, the teams at the
kind
top
of blown
tier,
the other teams out, but
I think are really good, but they're vulnerable. You know,
Iowa. Like, I don't buy Iowa as a top 4 team just because I've seen what happens to Fran McCaffrey in February. Like,
and then
Garza's going to score 35, but I mean, I don't trust the rest of those guys to step up every night.
And then Wisconsin,
the 40 points they're going to need to win.
You appreciate Wisconsin too, but you can beat them athletically. You know, they play their way. Yeah.
Marquette exposed a lot of flaws there.
And, you know, they beat Loyola handily, but there for a while, Loyola was giving them some runs. So, yeah, you got to play fundamentally sound against Wisconsin, but it's not like they're going to go out and, 40 pop you every night. Well, I guess if we play at the Kohl Center. But, usually, I just think they're vulnerable. And Illinois showed that they were vulnerable by losing to Missouri, although Missouri's playing, extremely
better
well.
than I think people thought they'd be, yeah. So, okay. All right. So I kind of rearranged these questions. We'll try to at least hit the top 2. We might have a chance to do just a quick one on the third, and then we can maybe tackle one of the others after the one or two of the others afterward, because we merely have 4 minutes and 28 seconds.
Wow, that's a question. Okay, so quick answers. Everyone.
I think just be quick on these, and Jeff's question is a good one, and I think we can be pretty quick answering that one, but I thought it was a good one, good way to kind of break up the season. So, and the other one,
I just saw that one you put in there. It says for coach.
Yeah, I didn't put that in there, but yeah, that is a good one. That's definitely a post. That's definitely a post,
after dark
post
one,
show.
Yeah.
All right, you guys ready?
Yep.
All right.
This is Jordan Halls, and I never miss a shot or an episode of the Assembly Call.
Welcome back to the Assembly Call. I'm Andy Bottoms here with the coach Brian Tonsoni and Ryan Phillips. And remember, you need to be subscribed to our email newsletter. We send out a weekly IU news roundup, even during the offseason. And after every game, we send out a detailed post-game analysis. So just text IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. That's IU to 66866 or go to assemblycall.com. Now, time for our mailbag. All questions submitted via our private IU basketball discussion community, which you can learn more about at assemblycall.com/community. And guys, we don't have a ton of time left with this, so we'll hop right into it. Jeff's question. He's being a coach that I am, like to break the season into quarters. 1 quarter through the season at 4-2. What do you think IU needs to do in the next 7 games to be considered successful, both for the Big Ten race and tournament selection? So, next 7 games are Butler, Northwestern, Penn State, Maryland, at Nebraska, and at Illinois and at Wisconsin. I realize I did not list those in order, but I didn't have the schedule in front of me. So what do you guys, Coach? I'll throw this one to you first. What do you think they need to do in those 7 games? What would make you feel good? Besides 7-0, obviously.
I think they have to go 5-2. I agree with Jeff there on that. And if they don't, the nice thing about the Maui Classic is you've banked a couple wins against Power 5 teams, and those teams might be tournament teams. Stanford, yes, right now, Providence on the bubble, but those aren't going to go away in a year where a lot of teams aren't playing non-conference. So the ultimate goal is making the tournament. We want to make it with a good seed, but yeah, those are games that I think you should win. Butler normally, I think, would be a tougher game, but coming off of COVID, and they might have lost the Thompson guy. I think I agree with Jeff that 5-2 has to be their run because the rest of the schedule is going to be a little tougher.
Yeah,
Ryan, what about you?
It's 5-2. If you lose at Illinois and at Wisconsin, you're okay with it as long as you play well. You got to show up and play well. That's not a concern unless you just flop. But yeah, I would say 5-2. The only road game in there, a true road game, is at Nebraska, who you should blow off the floor. So, that's 5-2 for me, 100%.
Yeah, I'm agree with the 5-2. Maybe you steal one on the road, as Jeff mentioned in the question. But I think if you look at neutral court against
6-1, you're thrilled.
Yeah, if you look neutral court against Butler, and then you got home games against 3 of the lesser teams in the Big Ten with Northwestern, Penn State, and Maryland, and you got a road game that you can win at the worst team in the league, feels like you have to sweep those, and then maybe you steal one of the other two. So 5-2 to me is the minimum. I wouldn't feel great about 4-3 because I don't think you can talk yourself into feeling good about any of the losses in the others. So Rick's question, if Joey or Al decided to play the extra year next year, does the scholarship limit have to remain at 13 or would it go to 14 or 15 scholarship players for that 1 year? I can answer this one quickly. It's my understanding of it is, and one of you guys can jump in if I'm wrong, is that it wouldn't really count against it, that they've given everybody the ability to do that, and so everybody is safe if they do that.
That is correct.
Okay. All right, let's see if we can hit one more. We got about a minute left here. Next one, Jim Tom Hoosier. Do you think the shooting success against North Alabama was more a result of poor zone defense? And even if it was, do you think the success might increase confidence and result in more success against better defenses? Ryan, you're the shot expert. What do you think about that?
I think that it was lesser competition and they felt more confident taking those shots. I don't think it had anything to do with the poor zone defense because there have been wide open shots all year that guys have not knocked down against good teams. I think it was just they felt confident, they were ahead by a lot, and they started making shots, started not worrying about getting their shots blocked, all that stuff, and just were stepping into shots confidently and hitting them. That was the difference, not the defense.
Coach, what about you? You got about 20 seconds.
Yeah, I'm getting tired of seeing open shots clank. So even on you got to make bad defenses pay, and Indiana did against North Alabama. So hopefully that'll carry on to get the open shots and knock them down.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately why you play those games, is to give yourself some confidence.
That's it. We're done. No more questions.
All right. Well, thank everybody for joining us tonight. I cannot find the outro. Good for me. All right, there we are. That'll do it for this week's episode of the Assembly Call. If you want to see us do the show live, join us at assemblycall.com on Thursday nights for the live broadcast of our Assembly Call radio recording. Don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing most of the music you hear on the show, and thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again on Saturday after the IU Butler game, and until then,
take it from me, Robert Johnson. Keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
The thing got moved around on my my soundboard, so totally botched it. What are you going to do? These things happen.
Hope none of you have Derek Carr in fantasy this week.
No, but I got Waller.
He's got a touchdown.
Yep.
Yeah, he caught a
Mariota's throwing the ball to him, so that's good. And I got Jacobs, and I got 3 Raiders.
That's
not usually a recipe for success.
Although I'm number 1 seed in the playoffs and still alive.
Who's your third Raider? Jacobs, and who's the other one?
The kicker.
Oh, okay.
That's all right. If one of them
that is Carlson, I think his name is. Is that right?
Yep.
All right, so we got a couple questions here. We'll try to hit, and then we'll.
I can actually stick around until my dinner delivery comes. So
well, nice. What's on the menu?
A place called Urban Plates has like good, fresh food. It's really good. Like cool. They use like expensive, like good ingredients kind of thing. It's one of those places.
Not like McDonald's.
Crazy.
No.
All right, so this one was from Brian. Saw this question posted on another forum. If this year's national champion goes undefeated, what is the minimum number of games they would need to play this year for it to legitimately count as the next undefeated champion? FYI, IU was 32-0. Powerhouse UCLA teams in the Alcindor Walton days went 30-0. So what do you guys think? Ryan, I'll throw that one to you first.
I mean, if it's 30, I think you can put yourself in that category. Even if you don't win a championship, if you win your first 30 games, you're a pretty darn good team. So I would say 30, but I don't even. Is anybody getting? What's the max anybody's playing? Like 25 this year?
27 max.
27, and then
I think
plus,
you can play 20, but then you'd have to play. But then you'd win 6 in the tournament. So
yeah,
you
so
could
you're
get
over
to
30.
33
I think if you're over
theoretically.
30, I think if you're over
30
Now
or
that's
over.
if you play all your games, which playing all your games feels pretty
true.
unlikely. But
You get over 30, and I'll consider you a legit undefeated. That's a legit undefeated season. It's like, if Ohio State goes 6-0 and then wins 2 games in the playoff and finishes 8-0, I'm not going to consider them one of the greatest teams of all time in college football. So, but I think that you play 30 games and go undefeated with the amount of travel these teams do these days and everything. I'm calling it. You're a legit undefeated team. And I definitely don't think
so.
I'm definitely not into asterisks on championships or whatever this year. This year is hard. You win a championship, you win a champion. I hate the Dodgers with every fiber of my being. They won a World Series this year. I don't care if it was, 60 games. They won a World Series.
I mean, I think to me this question really centers around Gonzaga. I don't think anybody that I've seen I find it really hard to believe any of the Big 12 teams that are ranked high would get, like Baylor's looked really good. I don't think they're going undefeated in the Big 12. No. And I don't think any major conference team really would. So to me, this is really a Gonzaga question.
Yes.
So if you look right now, as I just did, and then the window went away, they're 3-0. They've got 4 more non-conference games scheduled. They just picked up a neutral court game against Virginia for the day after Christmas. So they got Iowa and Virginia are their 2 remaining tough neutral court or tough. They are both neutral court non-conference games. So that would put them the best they can be non-conference unless they add games, which this year schedules are a moving target. But so let's assume this is a schedule. So that'd be 7. They play a 16-game league schedule in the West Coast Conference, I believe. So that'd put them
Plus
at
the
20.
Tournament.
That'd be put them at 23. I think the WCC
Conference
does something weird where they would really only they'd get a bye to the semifinals. I don't know what
That's
this says
2
about
more
me that
games.
I know these things, but let's just say that's 2 more games.
Why do you know these things? I don't know. Bracketology, maybe?
I don't know. Well, that is why. So you'd be 25 at that point.
And you got to win 6.
If you did it, and then you got to win 6 in the NCAA tournament. You'd be 31-0. Like, I would feel like that's legitimate. And there's parts of me that are like, this year, it wouldn't be more impressive, I don't guess. Somewhat with the uncertainty, like it would be a different year, but I certainly wouldn't put an asterisk by it. Now, I think if you get somebody who goes like 22-0, I think that's a different that to me is a different conversation. But I view this as largely a Gonzaga specific question because they're the one to me that really has a shot to do it, assuming they win these other couple games. And
hey,
people give them good games in the.
What about San Diego State? I almost did it last year.
I know. I just don't know if they could go through the tournament undefeated. But
I mean, they had a first-round draft pick. You know who's gone? The Malachi Flynn.
Yeah.
So it's different.
So, all right.
Just kidding.
Let's see. Next one, we got James. So this was specifically for Coach. So Ryan, we don't have to answer this.
Cool. I'm muting.
We feel obligated. All right. So for Coach, having witnessed multiple IU basketball national championship teams, if you could only witness one more IU national championship, and you could choose which team would win one, would you choose the football team or the basketball team? I know we are a basketball school, but I think it's an interesting question because a football championship would be unlike anything we've ever experienced as fans. I think it would also be interesting what incoming freshmen at IU might pick, seeing that most of them were just being born the last time IU went to the Final Four.
This one's easy for me. It's basketball. It's my 63-year-old rear end in the fountain with a bunch of co-eds, buying them beer on Kirkwood afterwards. We're a basketball state. Nothing against the football program. I've had season tickets for over 25 years and tailgate, and would love to see them in the Rose Bowl and be successful. I'm proud of them this year. But for me, it's basketball. I coach basketball. My kids played basketball. There's nothing like cutting down net. So yeah, it would be basketball.
Ryan, do you have I would be curious to hear your opinion on this, just because of your background as an IU fan and all that stuff. What would you say?
Well, I wasn't supposed to answer this question, so I was talking in the chat.
I mean, you don't have to. You can abstain if you so choose.
What was it? Would you prefer a
football championship or a basketball?
Basically, if IU was going to only win one other championship in your lifetime, would it be basketball or football? Yeah, it is a harder question than you might think.
Basketball,
I
100%.
tend to.
Yeah, you froze up a little bit.
Am I back now?
Yep.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
back. We heard you. Basketball 100% is what you
100%.
said, yeah.
Just because of how much it means to everybody in the state. You know what I mean? Like it's.
I mean, as long as particularly if it's still happening while we were doing the show, that would be pretty cool. Although apparently Coach would be in the fountain and not on the show. But
I wouldn't
right.
be intelligible on the show, but I'd be on the show.
I'd be remote. I'd get my phone out in the fountain doing remote,
Reporter on the scene. I like
Yeah.
it. We could do that. Yeah, I would tend to say basketball. I mean, that's really where my IU overall fandom was born, and but it's close for me because I have a lot of good memories of the football program and time spent as a family going to IU games and things like that. I mean, to me, those I've gotten in these questions before of like, if teams you root for, if you ranked like which one you'd want to see win a championship, which one might make you the most emotional if they won a championship. I mean, IU basketball and football have always been the top for me. I mean, even it was great when the Eagles won the Super Bowl. I was super excited. Things have not gone well for them since then. But
You got the championship. Stop complaining.
Yeah, I know. I'm not complaining. That's why I'm able
San
to live
Diego's
with it.
never
It's fine.
had one. Just stop.
So that's where it's like you think about some of that stuff, and it's always, I think people when I would talk to them would always be surprised that I would put IU football that way. But the program does mean a lot to me, but I would still struggle to pick something other than basketball in that scenario.
Yeah, and plus,
So Ryan, if you had so let's go with that question to you. So if there was a team that you rooted for that were to win something, like which one would mean the most? Would you?
I think
it's certainly we know who it's not. But.
Yeah, the Padres winning a World Series would mean so much to San Diego. I mean, it would change this town fundamentally. Even when the Chargers were here, and obviously I've disowned them, and all of my friends have as well, or they wouldn't still be friends. But I even when they were here, my friends and I used to sit around and be like, "Would you rather have a Super Bowl or a World Series?" And all of us unanimously said a World Series. It's just there's something special about that. You can't get lucky in a World Series. You have to win 4 games to win a championship in baseball. And you can have a fluky game and win in football, I think, or one injury can derail you. I feel like it's just means so much more to have to go through that arduous playoff chase. And so yeah, a World Series would mean so much to the city, especially after the Chargers left. I mean, that really would mean so much to us and his fans. I might legitimately cry if the Padres won a World Series because I also grew up. It wasn't like the Padres were competitive. They were always bad, and always one of the worst teams in baseball. And now obviously we've got ownership that is invested in the team and, making it better. And that was the doorbell for my dinner. But I think that, yeah, it just would be, it would mean so much to the city, and that would mean so much to me. And I think in the same way that, another basketball title would mean so much to Bloomington and Indiana as a whole, that's what I want to see. I mean, especially with how much time we've put into this, I just want us to get back there just once, get back there and be able to do a post-game show after a championship.
That would be good.
It would have to be explicit in the rating on the podcast.
Yeah,
I'm
for
just,
sure.
I'm just telling you.
Yeah, all bets are off. Yeah, at that point for sure. I think that's reasonable. All right. So next show, Butler, I believe at 11:30 a.m. tip is what I'm seeing on here. That's what I thought it was. So I think it's 11:30 tip.
Yep.
So Ryan, little breakfast hoops for you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Aaron Thompson went down yesterday, and he was helped off the court. Their point guard, leading scorer. I don't know if he'll be ready to go.
Yeah, it did seem like ankle. But
Yeah,
I
he was
didn't
grabbing
watch
at
any
his
of the
knee.
game.
He was grabbing right below his knee on the front side, and he did not look happy.
Yeah. Ugh, that sounds bad. Yeah, this is a game. I mean, Butler coming back. I think they said they had only made practice once heading into that Villanova game. Not exactly. I mean, you don't want to play anybody off one practice. Villanova would be pretty far down that list for me in terms of who you'd want to play.
Yeah, you know what, though? They hung tough for a while there, and then it just got spread out a little bit at, the 10, 11, 12 mark. It got to 7, 8, 9, and then it got up to double digits, about the 7-minute mark. You can't sleep on a team like Butler, because they guard.
Yeah, it's never easy against them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So should be good.
Yeah, it should be a good one. I think it'll be
good test. Is it you, Ryan? Just you and me for that one?
I think so. Are you out,
Coach?
Coach?
You have a game?
Yeah, I got a game. I don't know what time. Our shoot-around's usually in the afternoon, but I got a 40-minute drive, so I got to
for sure
kind of get my scouting
And then
report
Jared
done.
said he
No, you're
might.
good.
Jared said he might pop on. Is that the one he said he might pop on for? Or was that another?
I don't know. I'm on a show by show, day by day
Yeah,
basis
I
at
think
this
we
point.
all
So
are.
I knew you guys were going to be on here, and that was all that I needed to know to survive right now, and that's all I'm doing. So
quarantine, guys, we're all day to day. All right.
That's right.
absolutely.
That's the way I face work too. Do I go in? Do I not go in? Is it remote learning? Is it in-person learning?
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me in the morning.
All right. Well, at the very least, Ryan and I will be here after the Butler game, and we appreciate everybody joining us tonight. Stay safe, and we will talk to you on Saturday.
Later, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, guys. All right. See you.